Washington, while nowhere near the population size of, California, it has very similar politics. It's a supermajority blue state, and yet it's one of the most corporate states in the whole country.
Yeah. One of the most regressive tax systems in the whole country is in Washington state, despite the fact that we're one of the, like you said, probably 5 or 6 most liberal or leftist or progressive or however you want to define that states in the country. And, I caught the end of that discussion that you guys were having with Anthony. I thought it was fantastic. Hadn't heard of him because he's Florida State, but shout out to Anthony. He sounds like he's running a great campaign. I think there's, I think a lot of times the Democrats candidates like themselves, like I'll use the example in Washington state. You mentioned how liberal we are. Patty Murray is actually like, this is a serious race against Tiffany Smiley. This is a deep blue state, and a Democratic senator who's been entrenched for 20 years is struggling to beat a far right extremist maniac. And that is because, she's number 3 in the Senate. And yet she really doesn't do much outside of toe the party line. So we have a very machine version of politics in Washington state, outside of a few like Shama Sawant. There are a couple other socialists on the Seattle City Council. But for the most part, we have a very partisan, machine-oriented version of politics here. And, even Pramila Jayapal, who sort of, purports herself to be a progressive and perhaps is progressive compared to like most of the Democrats, but she's to me, she's just been so feckless and so weak, and she has been such a disappointment to actual lefties who were banking on her and her caucus to take any stand on any of these issues at all. And I think people are just sick of it. I mean, I think people in Washington are so sick of it that they're disenfranchised from the process entirely. I think lefties are deciding, why the hell am I going to vote for Patty Murray when I could just write someone in or vote green or not even vote at all? And, again, not to keep beating the dead horse, but this is one of the things I think ranked choice really addresses. It brings people back into the process. And also, even if it just forced Patty a little bit left, what if this was a ranked choice process and she actually had to come out here and say, I will fight for Medicare for all in order to excite her base because someone else came and ran to her left. You know what I mean? So yeah, to answer your question, we have a very machine version of politics, despite the, very progressive or liberal constituency that Washington state has, at least to the west of the mountains.
We're speaking with Luke Parcher, host of the Luke Parcher Show on the Real Progressives.
They have huge income inequality there.
Oh, absolutely.
Out of control there. And I know that they also have serious housing issues there. And so when you see states that are blue states like Washington, like California, and you look at their unhoused populations, and you look at what people who are working full-time jobs but still can't afford to live and are living in cars or under freeways, that doesn't speak highly of what all the people falling in the Democratic line are saying. So how does that, how do we reconcile those two things?
I'll give you a good example. And I still think in terms of the 2016 primary, and there's a lot of things that can be laid at the feet of Debbie Wasserman Schultz and a few others, but Washington state in particular was exceptionally egregious in how they conducted business. Bernie turned his campaign in the right direction and probably would have pulled it off if not for the shenanigans after he won the Michigan primary. Now, what stands out the most regarding the Washington caucus primary is the fact that Bernie came within an eyelash of clearing 3/4 of the vote, which means he would have secured all 100 delegates. And as a result, every single super delegate voter in the state of Washington still voted for Hillary Clinton, led by Patty Murray. And to me, that's when anyone pretending like they give a rat's rear end about the GOP.
He's like an elephant.
And, try to figure out whether or not we live in a democracy. No, you don't have a democracy. In fact, the democracy is even better on the GOP side because they don't have super delegates.
Yeah. Oh, they're infinitely more democratic in their primary process than the Democrats are.
If the Democrats didn't have super delegates, I would almost feel like Bernie probably would have pulled it off as Trump did, because there wouldn't have been, remember.
He definitely would have.
Well, they also kept on doing on national TV, if you remember, they kept on putting up not the total delegate count, but the delegate with the super delegate count to make it look like Bernie was an idiot to even continuing to run against Hillary. So Washington state in particular is incredibly egregious in how they do business because they're considered to be, a progressive state, but not really.
Well, Darren Soto were in the Progressive Caucus.
That's
I'm just saying.
One thing we could give Debbie Wasserman Schultz credit for, she doesn't pretend.
She used the word progressive on her mailers. She actually said she claimed to be progressive in the Sun Sentinel interview. She said she claims to be progressive.
Well, that word has, if you could speak on that, Luke, I think the word progressive has really been co-opted.
We got to drop it at this point. We need to go elsewhere.
I've started calling myself a leftist. It is, that'll probably become an ambiguous term in the same way at some point here soon. But yeah, like Patty Murray's out here running TV ads claiming she's a progressive, And I mean, I at that point, it's just that the term means nothing. It's like when the Republicans call everyone a fucking communist. It's like that term doesn't mean anything anymore when you literally apply it to anybody who's not like a raging right-wing fascist. You know what I mean? So I absolutely think it's a problem on the left. Like these terms become so ambiguous. We don't even know what to call ourselves. We end up fighting about it.
We fight them, we eat our own. But what I actually have taken to doing now is I don't just say I'm a leftist. I say I'm an actual leftist, not a partisan leftist. Because when I talk to people that are libertarians, and we have a lot of people, these are just regular people, and they're so turned off by the woke stuff and by the Democrats, and they think that the Democrats are leftists, which we know that they're not leftists, but to the people that are the normal, reasonable people, they associate that. And so when I say it, I say I'm an actual leftist, not a partisan, not a party leftist. And that's... Yeah,
I think there's a nice comparison to the current elections right now. I mean, I certainly don't want to demean social issues, which I do think are incredibly important, and I'm very much left on those issues. But here's the thing. Democrats run exclusively on those issues. In fact, I was just seeing a breakdown. They've spent like $320 million on abortion alone. Now, again, important issue. Bring your base out on abortion. You should be talking about abortion after the Dobbs decision. But to completely neglect economic issues when voters are telling you in polls that the top two things that matter to them are the economy and inflation, which I grant there's some like overlap there. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's seriously like I thought we learned this 30 years ago, right? But no, it's for them to completely neglect the economics, especially, by the way, not that the Democrats have a great case to make on the economy, but they certainly can slam Republicans on the economy because the Republican plan is let's further squash workers. For them to not be out there making that case and instead be hyper-fixating exclusively on these social issues, when they also know that those are the issues that turn off a lot of middle Americans, I sincerely, from like a purely strategic standpoint, I do not understand it at all. And it's probably, and to Bernie's credit, he's been out talking about this a little bit, it might cost them quite a few seats here this election.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.